been around or might have saw it. Make sure that you get their contact information. That's really important. And then also what a lot of people don't do is they don't get the names of either the employee or the person, the store manager that maybe came over and tried to help you if God forbid you got hurt in some sort of store.
Another item people forget to do is their SR1 with the Department of Motor Vehicles. If you're in an accident and there's damage of more than $500, you're required to file a statement with the Department of Motor Vehicles indicating that there's been an accident. People forget to do that as well.
Is that just with car accidents?
That's with car accidents, correct.
Right, yeah. Through the DMV, you have to fill it out. And there's actually, I think, a fine. If you don't, it's a minor fine, but it's still fine.
I believe it's an infraction, I believe, not to do that.
Yeah, and I think you can do that online now. That's something we have to look up. But either way, you need to get that done. A lot of times, if you're insured, your insurance company will take care of that for you, but you have to double check and make sure. But so with regards to making sure that you properly document, we want to talk about what happens next and sort of what are the reasons that you need an attorney. Jay, what you were going to tell us?
And we were going through the anatomy of a personal injury case, and we talked about documentation. We talked about basically establishing your loss of income and employment opportunities. Maybe you get a letter from your employer. Maybe that's bolstered by something your doctor says that indicates that the accident is related to the injury or the injury is related to the accident. Then the next step you have to do is if you have an auto accident, you get your photographs of your vehicle together, and if you contact the counsel, the next thing your attorney's job is to do is to put all that information together, to marshal all that evidence, and present something called a demand package. And that demand package is then presented to the insurance company, who then evaluates it. And sometimes the insurance company may actually send the attorney's office or the person who's unrepresented a release in order to get the medical information themselves, so they can evaluate it directly from your medical providers.
Have you seen opportunities where you'll get an insurance adjuster who will call an injured party or a claimant right at the start? I've seen this, and where they initially want to offer you money, and they'll literally send you a settlement agreement and release with a dollar value in it already in the hopes that you'll sign it real quick.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and I see that when people come to me and they've been handling their case themselves for a while. They've already had a lot of contact with the other side's insurance representatives, and it is in the insurance representatives, sometimes they sort of are like the wolf in sheep's clothing. They come in and they say, you know what, hey, let's resolve this. Oh, we want to do this fairly. We want to represent you in this, and well, not represent you, but take care of this as quickly and as fairly as possible. And they try to settle it for as low amount of money as they can early on sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, right? If you're in a car accident and you don't really know what to do, you don't really want to deal with it, maybe you don't feel like you're in pain, right? Because that's not immediate, and then you're kind of like, I don't really want to bother calling a lawyer. I don't want to have to fight this. So they just handle it with the insurance company themselves, right? Because the adjuster's calling them and really pressuring them.
And I see that a lot. I see people come to me, the statute of limitations for a personal injury in the state of California is 2 years. And just so people understand, a statute of limitations means the date by which you have to file your lawsuit in state court before your claim is lost forever. And there's very few exceptions to that rule. Very few. So you have 2 years to get this claim together. And, the period of time where you want to, start putting your claim together and pushing it forward is when you're permanent and stationary in your injury. That's a legal term. Permanent and stationary means we've determined what's wrong with you. You're not necessarily going to get any worse. You're as good as you're going to be, or your prognosis is in. That's the point in time when the evidence is all in as to what your injury is. That's when you want to put your claim together.
But now, if you marshal up all that evidence and you're ready to go and try to get this case resolved, well, why do you need an attorney? I mean, what's the benefit of having an attorney?
Well, what I see that the insurance companies don't treat people who are improper or self-represented the same fashion they may treat an attorney.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, an attorney who's well qualified and competent is going to be able to take this case from the demand all the way to the jury trial. Whereas if you are self-represented, the insurance company is going to say, you know what, I don't think this guy is going to be prepared to do much of anything.
Well, have you found in your practice a lot of times that you'll have a client come in the door who's been trying to do it themselves and they have a very low offer and it's almost shocking?
Yeah, I see that almost monthly. I see that, we see that very, very often. And really what we do, sometimes they've missed a key piece of their demand package. They don't have an element there that they need to show. Or they've not been communicating in a fashion with the insurance company that the insurance company is going to take them seriously, or they have basically evaluated their claim wrong.
Yeah, well, probably one of the most important things to think about and realize is that you don't necessarily have to file a lawsuit, right? I mean, I think a lot of people tend to think if they bring a lawyer on, it's automatically going to go to court. And for people that don't necessarily want to deal with that, right, it doesn't always happen.
I see the benefit when you bring a lawyer in is then the insurance company seems to take you a little more serious.
Oh, definitely.
And it's important. People, if you're going in interviewing attorneys that you may consider representing you in a personal injury matter, it is important to check that attorney out and make sure that they actually have some trial experience, because a lot of insurance companies, I believe all of them these days, keep track of your attorney. They want to know if you actually have the courage to take a case to trial. Win or lose, if you go to trial, then they believe you more and they realize that you're serious.
Well, I remember early in my career, 18 years ago, I remember after I had my first couple of trials, I remember my offers then got much better. That's one of the things I saw in my cases.
I learned that. I'm going to give a shout out to an old attorney. He's not old. Forgive me, Sam. You're a great guy. But a guy named Sam Frazier I used to work with in La Jolla. He's an excellent attorney. He's also a great sailor. He's great boat he used to have all the time. I don't know if he still has it. But Sam, I haven't talked to you in a while. If you're out there, love your buddy. But yeah, he taught me that a long time ago. He would try cases. And he said, if you want to get any respect from the adjusters or any respect from the insurance carriers, you have to go out there and try a case. Win or lose, good or bad. And you do it, and it's actually a lot of fun. It's the beauty of what we do. I always say, I liken it to practicing for some sport, and then you finally get to play in the sport during the game. The practice isn't nearly as fun, but the sport sure is. Well, anyway, I noticed that it's about 10 seconds left. In our next hour, we're going to talk, our next segment, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of divorce. It's a pretty interesting topic. We'll be right back. AM 760. Employment claims are on the rise in California. Too often, employees are now claiming they did not receive their meal and rest breaks. The law allows a non-exempt employee the right to take a 10-minute, uninterrupted rest break once every 4 hours of work. Employees are also entitled to a 30-minute, uninterrupted meal break if they work more than a 5-hour shift. And that meal period is supposed to be taken near the middle of the shift. What about those times when the employee is answering the phones during their lunch or working with customers? Is the meal period no longer uninterrupted? These are the issues that should never be overlooked if you are the employer. Class actions and private attorney general actions are being filed all the time. These lawsuits end up costing the employers tens of thousands of dollars to defend and settle. If you are the subject of an employment claim or employee lawsuit, you need to call our office today to get help. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. Call us today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275. Or visit us online at starklegalhour.com.
Hi, I'm attorney Anna Romanskaya. If you're involved in a family law matter and need an experienced attorney, give our team at Stark and D'Ambrosio a call. From a divorce to child custody, child support, spousal support, property division, marital settlement agreement, prenuptial agreements, or post-judgment issues, we are here to help you get through the tough times. Our attorneys are compassionate yet aggressive in our representation. We're sensitive to the costs associated with these types of matters, and we will do our best to work with you. That can include taking payment plans or credit card payments to make sure you don't lose your rights due to financial constraints. Many people rush to enter into an agreement, and then they realize they made a bad deal. Entering into the right agreement can save you tens of thousands of dollars. It's important to hire the right attorney. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. Call us today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275.
This is the Stark Legal Hour. Your legal questions are answered live. Call now.
I don't want to interrupt the song. I like the song. Welcome back, everybody, to Stark Legal Hour. I'm your host, Patrick Stark. Once again, this is your opportunity to give us a call here if you'd like. The phone number here is 1-800-760-KFMB. That's 1-800-760-5362. Feel free to give us a call, or if you want to tweet us any questions, go ahead and tweet us at SDLawyers. We're actually at Attorney Stark. And you can check out our webpage at the starklegalhour.com. Starklegalhour.com. There is no "the" in front of that. I should remember that. So anyway, we talked about in our first segment that we're going to talk about the 5 stages of divorce. Now, I've never heard of that. What is that, Anna?
Thanks, Pat. So, when we talk about stages of divorce, what we're talking about is the emotional impact of going through a separation, going through a breakup. What type of feelings do you experience? So when we sort of in the industry talk about the 5 stages, what we're talking about specifically is the feelings of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance.
I know I had a lot of bargaining.
So, you know,
Isn't there a lot of bargaining in divorce all the way around? Or there's bargaining in a marriage, too.
There's a lot of begging, too. Anyway, continue, Anna. I forget.
so these different emotional stages, they don't necessarily come in this exact order. These are the emotions that we all feel whenever we're going through any kind of a life change. You
So
know,
it's like denial. I can't believe I'm getting divorced. This isn't happening to me. We're not getting divorced. This is not going on right now.
right. Or you can start off with anger. You know, if your spouse cheated on you, you're probably, in all likelihood, pretty angry about it. So, you know, there might be feelings of wanting to retaliate or wanting to move the case from a positional standpoint where you're leading with your feelings as opposed to looking the bigger picture. And
Well, that's an
really
interesting
thinking
point. Okay, so sometimes I've heard people ask this question to family law attorneys. If I catch my spouse cheating on me, does that change what I get in my divorce?
about. The short answer is no, because California is what's called a no-fault state. What that really means is the reason you're getting divorced doesn't matter. Your spouse could have had 15 affairs on you, and if that's the reason for your divorce, it has no bearing
50-50.
on whether, it has no bearing on whether you can get the divorce. California is unique in that sense because you can really get a divorce because you want to. You don't need the other spouse's permission or consent to do it. So, you know, going through the emotional impact of a separation is important to understand from an attorney standpoint because we need to know how to be able to work with you as our client and help you through the process. Because if our client is really angry and says, you know, I want to just go and, you know, I want to get all the assets in divorce because I just do, because I feel like I'm entitled to, because, you know, he cheated on me, and so therefore I deserve everything.
I should win.
I should win, you know?
Right.
It's important for the attorney, someone like me, to sit down with my client and be like, okay, I understand you're feeling really upset. I understand you're feeling angry. Let's look at how we can accomplish your goals, and really, what is it that you actually want? Is it because you actually want to keep the couch because you want to, you know, stick it to your spouse, or do you want to keep the couch because it has sentimental value for it? And then we have the conversation of, well, how much is it going to cost to fight over this couch? And that's the biggie.
Now, the only thing I seem to find right here, I've heard people complain about it, because I'm a man, I have male friends, and sometimes they complain about the fact that they feel like they're really but he's going through a situation where his soon-to-be ex-wife is just full of rage and anger, and it seems to be going through into her attorney, and they're fighting for everything, which makes no sense, because it's going to cost them a fortune.
Well, right, and that's what ends up happening if you're really stuck in the anger stage. And even if it's the other side that's really stuck with it, like in the case you're referencing, we have a scenario where, you know, the wife is just going after going down a rabbit hole, really, and there's no money to do it. And so what you're faced with at the end of the day is a really, really large attorney's bill. And
That pile is not getting any bigger.
exactly. You know, if you're trying to discover the existence of a retirement when a retirement was never there to begin with, but, you know, you're so angry that you're convinced there has to be some money and you deserve it, you can go through all the discovery in the world to try to obtain that information, but you're not going to get anywhere other than a really large attorney bill.
Yeah, for those listeners out there, the word discovery just means the methods by which information is gathered, financial information, other types of information to put together evidence to put on a case.
Well, you know, on the flip side, if you're, for example, if you're in the depression stage, right, and you just kind of want to avoid the situation, and you just want to just get through it, be done with it, you don't want to deal with it, so you might be willing to settle for anything. And that might not be in your best interest, that might not be in your children's best interest if you have kids, you know, or it might impact you substantially financially in the long run. So it's really important for me as your attorney to understand that as well and recognize in you, okay, well, you know, it seems like you're kind of giving up on this process, and, you know, I'm not encouraging you to fight necessarily, but I do want you to understand what your options are so you can make an educated decision.
So it sounds to me like it'd be pretty important that considering those 5 stages of emotions that you're going to go through with a divorce, you need to find an attorney who's even keeled and is going to be able to help you either if you're in the depression stage or the anger stage to counsel you, which is what we are, right? We're counselors, to get you through this difficult time.
Well, right, and sometimes, people, especially if they're in that anger stage, they say, I want a lawyer who's going to be a shark. I want a lawyer who's going to fight for me, and we're going to go to court, and we're going to battle every tiny little issue, and that's just how it's going to be because I want to win.
Does it make for a happy client later on, though?
Well, I'll tell you, there's plenty of lawyers out there who will say, okay, I'll go be your bulldog, let's go fight the good fight, but then at the end of the day,
It's not really a good fight.
you might, quote, win sort of the battle, but, you might lose the war, especially if you have a really large attorney's bill, because, guess what? We charge for our time. You want us to go and argue every tiny little issue in court? It's going to cost you, and, I think for a lot of folks out there, they don't really understand that, and, I'll tell you, for me, my practice is I tell my clients right off the bat that, you want me to go and fight this issue, this is approximately how much time it's going to take, and this is what your dollar figure is looking like. Do you really want to go fight over that couch?
I've been doing this 25 years, and I do it with my clients as well. They want emotion, they want something happening in court. I always give them a rough estimate of what it's going to cost, so they have an idea of it going in before they get that surprise bill at the end of the month. And that's the other thing I like to say to my clients when they say, I want a pit bull, I want a bulldog to be my attorney. Problem is that sometimes that pit bull and bulldog will turn around and bite you. And what I mean by that is at the end of the day, you've got this $60,000 attorney fee bill, and you're upset, and you're mad, and then you're out there yelling at, blaming attorneys because they ran up a $60,000 bill, when in fact it was your anger that kept pushing that attorney to do stuff. But I agree with you, Ed, it's really important to make sure that your attorney can sort of help control the client. And I think in your practice, you said you've seen that many times, and you can tell the attorney is not controlling the client.
Right, yeah, and the attorneys that, you may think on the front end is fighting for you because they're taking on your emotion with you and sort of transferring that, that's not always the best advocate. I always tell my clients that we're a team going through this process, and it's kind of like taking a road trip where my client is the driver and tells me where they want to be at the end of the day, and I'm the navigator because I lead you there and I tell you how to get there, and it has to be that give and take relationship, and you have to be willing to listen to your advocate, and that's really what makes a good attorney, especially if you're going through a divorce.
The civil court system has a mediation program, and does the family law system have a mediation program?
Yeah, definitely. We talked about a couple shows back sort of the value of trying to settle and trying to see if you can work things out outside of the courtroom doors where you maintain control. And you certainly see a lot of that in family law. I think the statistic is about 90-95% of cases end up settling, and more so really in family law than I think even in other civil cases, because, these days it takes quite a while to get your case heard, even if it's on custody and support issues. You can't just walk into court unless you have a really true emergency and get a court order. So, people, no matter whether you're feeling anger or depression or denial, you're sort of almost forced to have to try to mediate with the other parent or the other spouse to try to get any kind of resolution.
Have you had any success in your practice being able to get people to mediation early, just voluntarily going to mediation?
Sure, yeah, and when we talk about the cost, that tends to motivate people. When I say, okay, if we go through mediation, maybe you're looking at about a $5,000 tab versus going to litigate this and going to a trial, you're probably looking at a $25,000 tab.
Well, I had a good question popped in my head a few minutes ago. I forgot, and it's back. What can you tell our listeners, especially it seems like the non-income earning spouse who goes to the attorney and the attorney says to them, hey, you know what, don't worry about all these bills, I'm going to get the other side to pay it. Do you find that's true? Do you find that there's a certain percentage that normally gets paid or not paid? Can you comment on that at all?
So the request for attorney's fees from the other side, there's a couple different scenarios and when you can do that. The most popular one is when there is a disparity in income. So if you have, let's say, husband who is the higher income earner, and then you may have wife who maybe was a stay-at-home and doesn't have an income stream and needs to get an attorney, the court can assess the need based on the disparity in their respective circumstances and whether the wife's attorney's fees can be paid or at least the contribution can be made. So, I see that a lot. It is discretionary. It's up to the judge to to make that decision.
So when the lawyer let's say I walk in the door and I need a lawyer, and let's say my wife was the breadwinner and she made all the money in the world and I didn't make any money, and my lawyer says to me, don't worry, she's going to pay all of it. Should I trust that?
You can't guarantee.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee that that's going to happen because, like I said, it's discretionary. It's up to the judge. So I will tell you honestly, I've had cases where I've had all the facts and all the law on my side, and then I go in and the judge is having a bad day or just really didn't like my client for one reason or another and just didn't order it.
Never your fault.
It's, I was a great lawyer. It was not my fault. I advocated my butt off.
I've seen that a lot, and then what happens is you end up as there is an attorney that I'm aware of in town who I've heard from several different people complain about, where he makes that representation and he runs up these big bills, and then when the judge doesn't order it, suddenly he's turning and looking back at his client.
Yeah, you got to be really careful. If there's one thing I leave you with, it's you got to be really careful because at the end of the day, especially with attorney's fees, you can think that you're going to get this big support order or that you're going to get this big attorney's fees order, but it's not guaranteed unless you reach an agreement outside of court. It's really not guaranteed, and then it's on you.
Yeah, and everyone out there should know that life is a negotiation. If you find yourself in that situation and your attorney's coming back after you and he's got a $60,000 bill, life is a negotiation. Negotiate with him, folks. Anyway, on our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about mediation as it relates to both divorce and civil matters. This is the Stark Legal Hour. Thanks for listening, folks. Back on. MB. Have you been seriously injured in an auto accident? Let the attorneys at Stark and D'Ambrosio help. Our team of attorneys have recovered millions of dollars for our client. We know how to properly document your case and your injuries. From day-in-the-life videos to life care planners, we understand what it takes to get the other side to the table and take your matters seriously. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. Call us today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275. Or visit us online at starklegalhour.com.
Are you having a hard time in your relationship? Are you thinking of separating, maybe even divorce? These are difficult decisions to make, and the ultimate outcome may have many consequences. Before you take that step, it's important to talk to an experienced attorney and learn about your options. I'm attorney Anna Romanskaya, and family law is my area of expertise. The attorneys at Stark and D'Ambrosio are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. If you're going through any of these issues, give us a call today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275. You can also find us online at starklegalhour.com.
Local news. Now, the stories you need. The stories you want to talk about.
An Alpine house fire kills 2 people. I'm Rick Williams. That's one of the stories we're following on AM 760. Well, 2 people were killed overnight. 2 others suffered only minor injuries following a house fire in Alpine about 1 a.m. Now, the house is a total loss. Identities of the dead haven't been released. A judge ruled late Friday that the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California owes the San Diego County Water Authority an additional $43 million on top of the $188 million fine for overcharging for water from 2011 to 2014. And it's hot across the city, and we have set a new record for an overnight low. We had 77 degrees from Friday into today. That ties the record set in 1875, the year that temps began being recorded. News brought to you by San Diego Air and Space Museum, Balboa Park. There's only one place to experience it. Da Vinci, the ultimate innovator, now open only at the San Diego Air and Space Museum in Balboa Park. Details at DaVinciSanDiego.com. And remember, the Chargers take on the Steelers Monday Night Football. Game is live on CBS 8. It's at Qualcomm. For news every half hour and when it happens, follow AM 760 KFMB.
Contractors starting work to shore up the washed-out foundations under some of the 18 small bridges that crisscross 2 rivers and swamps. A 13-mile closed stretch of Interstate 95 in South Carolina. No estimate when the road, which carries 30,000 vehicles a day, could reopen. Governor Nikki Haley says the whole state is humming with activity.
We have 18 disaster survivor assistant teams that are right now in 10 counties that are working. $7 million has been approved for assistance so far.
CBS News correspondent David Begnaud.
Highway 41 running through Andrews is under about 16 feet of water. We took a boat down the highway. There's a bridge that usually has about 12 feet of open space from the bottom of the bridge to the water below, and the water is at the bridge.
The new storm system could bring as much as an additional inch of rain, but forecasters say it shouldn't make the flooding much worse. CBS News Update. I'm Sam Litzinger.
I'm attorney James D'Ambrosio. Even though the news and social media say crime is down, DUI conviction rates are at their highest they have been in years. In California, over 130,000 persons were convicted of a DUI last year. If you have one or two drinks and drive in Southern California, you can be charged with a DUI. Remember, even though you are charged, you are not guilty yet. An aggressive defense attorney can help you either defend the case or work to reduce the severe penalties a DUI can bring. Contact Stark and D'Ambrosio to help you defend your DUI case. Our firm has represented clients charged with DUIs for 20 years. You need an aggressive attorney with knowledge on how to fight a DUI to get you the best outcome. We can help you navigate the court system, and we are not afraid to push the case to jury trial to get you the best result. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your DUI case. Call us today, 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275.
AM 760 KFMB. This is the Stark Legal Hour, where your legal questions are answered live. Call now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Stark Legal Hour. I'm your host, Patrick Stark. Again, that call-in number, if you want to give us a call, is 1-800-760-KFMB. That's 1-800-760-5362. You can also tweet us your questions at SD Lawyers. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can go to starklegalhour.com and you'll find our website. You can contact us through there. So when before we took our break, we were talking about mediation. And oh, wait a minute, it is the bottom of the hour. And
It's time for our legal disclaimer. The information in this radio program has been prepared by Stark and D'Ambrosio for informational and educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal advice. This radio program is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship and is not a substitute for legal advice from a qualified attorney who thoroughly reviews your matter. Stark and D'Ambrosio expressly disclaims any and all liability in respect to any actions taken or not taken based on the contents of our radio show.
Very nice, Jay. We should put some music behind that or something. I think that's fun. Anyway, so we were talking about mediation a little bit. Who wants to take this? What is mediation? How can you explain that to our listeners?
Well, are we going to talk about it in the family law context or in the general civil law
Let's talk about
context?
generally, because mediation essentially is the same in any context, how it actually works.
Well, the concept of a mediator, right, is that you have a neutral who is listening to both sides and facilitating a negotiation.
And it's a piece of professional. Sometimes he's an attorney or a retired judge, and he will, you have to
Or
pay him. Or she.
Don't be sexist,
Yeah,
Jay.
and usually it can be through the court's pilot program if you're in litigation, or it can be privately. There's a number of mediation services in town that we use. I don't know if we should name anyone.
No, they're expensive.
But I think what's good about it, and that I always sell it to my clients, and I tell them, listen, it's confidential. If it's unsuccessful, the things that are said there can't be brought up in court later on.
And a mediation essentially is you just go to an office somewhere. It's usually a pretty nice office. They've got food, they've got drinks. You get into your own room, usually with your attorney. Sometimes they do a joint session where the other side's there as well. But I've been finding I haven't seen joint sessions now in a long time because it seems to cause fights and anger. So you and your attorney will be in one room, the opposing party and their attorneys are in another room, and the mediator just goes back and forth and gives you his best advice and tries to help facilitate a settlement, right?
Yeah, so I can tell you, in the family law context, you have another option in mediation. You can have a mediation session where you have the attorneys involved, sort of like what, Pat, you were describing, where you have the mediator who's the neutral facilitating a negotiation, and then each party has an attorney and they're in their respective corners. Or if you want to go through a mediation and you're not represented, the other scenarios where you can have the parties who are unrepresented hire a mediator or a mediation service and go at it without attorneys. So there's pros and cons to that. Maybe a pro is that it
I
might
see that more in family law, right? That's not
right, that's
general
what I'm
civil law. I don't see that.
Right, so in family law where it might be on the front end, it might be cheaper if you go without an attorney, but ultimately at the end of the day, you still need to have an attorney review any proposed settlements, because whether in family or in civil, the mediator can't give you legal advice.
And that's a tough line if you're the mediator, right? If you've got two unrepresented people who are going through a divorce, because they're looking to you because you're actually a lawyer or a retired judge, and they want to know the answer. Am I entitled to this? Am I not entitled to that? So what I found that it requires a lot of trust. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, but at the end of the day, the mediator mediator, just by virtue of their position, can't give you advice. They can't tell you whether the agreement that you're about to enter into is a good one for you or not a good one for you, because their job is to facilitate that negotiation and that settlement. So if you want advice and you want someone to actually advise you on whether the deal that you're about to enter into is a good one for you, you need to hire an attorney who's just going to represent you.
Well, some of the most effective mediations I've ever been to have been by retired judges who have a lot of clout, and they are willing to just stay there in that room until everybody is going to settle. And they will tweak you and they will keep you there. They are not afraid to keep you there until 8 o'clock at night, because I think there's something to be said psychologically about, hey, you cannot leave this place until you come into some resolution of this dispute here.
That is true. It's some of my most successful mediations have gone 12, 13, 14 hours in a day. I remember, Jane, you and I had one up in Orange, in San Bernardino. Started at 9 in the morning. We didn't get out of there till midnight.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was a fun one.
And sometimes it seems really impossible, because you might start out in complete polar opposites. Like if you're arguing or damages, right? I mean, somebody could say maybe the plaintiff wants $1 million and the other side's offering $5 million.
Well, that was the one with the auto case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember.
Names.
Okay, but you made a point earlier about how, hey, we used to have joint sessions. Everyone would be there. Mm-hmm. And I remember during that one, I think that was about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I stood up and I gave a presentation of the case to the other side, basically telling them how their case was terrible, and then we didn't see them for 4 hours. And I think the idea of having it start jointly sometimes inflames everyone so much that it sets you back.
The only thing because I've been doing this for a long time, and the mediations used to be a lot touchier, feelier than they are now. Nowadays, everybody's in your private rooms, and you just see the mediator. But what I enjoyed back when we used to do the joint sessions, because that was my opportunity as the attorney to be able to talk directly with the client of the other side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of them always listening to just their lawyers, I was able to let them really hear my side. I remember some mediations that they used to do. I didn't find them very effective, and it was actually somewhat annoying. And I don't know if this would be working in family law, but they would make the client talk about his case and then make the other party on the other side repeat what that client just said. And you would see some upset people.
I've never seen that in family. I mean, the successful, or I guess the more effective mediators, are those that act as facilitators, listen to the lawyers. And usually our practice is they'll meet with the lawyers first and get kind of the idea of what the main issues are. Mm-hmm. And then, the parties may come into that and, contribute, but with the assistance of their attorney. And that's the benefit of having an attorney by your side.
Well, isn't the whole alternative dispute resolution movement in law, I mean, that's really a product of the mid to late 80s. That's when it really started becoming pushed. I remember when I was sworn in, back in the mid 90s, right? They were
dark ages.
Yeah, well, it's long ago for some, but not for others. But I remember one of the speaker for when during our commencement, when we were all sworn in, the speaker said, "Hey, the billable hour is dead. Alternative dispute resolution is the future," was what they were saying when they were pushing that. And
I know the courts are pushing it a lot nowadays because they're just overcrowded. They can't. If you didn't have mediation and alternative dispute ways of resolving your cases, you would never get to trial. You'd be talking 5, 6, 7 years to trial.
Well, and here's the other consideration, right? Because on the front end, if you have a really complex case, it may very well be helpful to have a neutral to try to assess and give you a projection of what it might look like if it went to court.
like to evaluate it.
Right. And you can use the mediation process to get an idea, a realistic one, of what your case, how it may turn out if it went to trial.
Yeah, like someone other than my office or the other opposing counsel to tell the client.
Right. A reality check.
Yeah, this doesn't pass the laugh test. This is a ridiculous position. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, and sometimes people need to hear that because, sort of piggybacking on our last segment about those stages and the feelings, if you're really stuck in your position because you're angry, sometimes it's very helpful to hear somebody who is not your lawyer, maybe who's not the other side, is someone who's a neutral to give you perspective and give you the reality.
It's nice to be able to hear from somebody else because eventually, too, I think clients get somewhat tired of listening to their own lawyer, over and over again, telling them how great their case is or how bad their case is.
Yeah, or they might feel discouraged because if their lawyer is constantly saying, no, that's a bad idea, no, I don't want to go argue that, no, you're going to lose. You know, they might start having doubts on whether the lawyer's really on their side.
And now mediation, I'm sorry, Jay, for cutting in. A lot of times mediation too, clients will be a little nervous about it because it seems expensive. But in relation to what you're actually going to spend, a lot of times it's worth it, right? Wouldn't you agree, Anna or Jay?
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's a bunch of different times you can do mediation. Sometimes, a great system is the federal court here in San Diego, because they have something called an early neutral evaluation conference they do right from the get-go. When you file your case, sometimes the court will send out an order that says no one can do any discovery or depositions or anything until we have something called an early neutral evaluation conference. Brings everybody in and sees if they can even resolve it as like a gatefold measure before you even get to the court.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's hard in family law sometimes, because if you can try to get everybody in a room and see what you can resolve, maybe on the smaller issues, but if you're dealing with financials or there's any kind of, bigger issues that require some disclosures, like if you're trying to divide bank accounts, or you're trying to divide investment accounts or retirement accounts or home.
The opening scene in the movie Wedding Crashers. Why don't you give me some miles?
Yeah, so there's cases where you're gonna do the mediation early, and then there's cases where you're gonna need all the financial disclosures. You might need to do all of your discovery.
Right. Well, so that you know what it is that you're negotiating and what it is that you have to
So
define.
even though we might have a retired judge charging $500 an hour, and it's a $3,000 day or an $8,000, $4,000 day, it can be worth it, because you're going to spend that at depositions and experts and everything else over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, depending on what kind of case you have.
Yeah.
So
you're going to be paying your lawyer to sit in trial for 8 hours.
Right, exactly. Well, that's very interesting. But I do propose mediation whenever I can, and it's a very, very helpful tool to be used in litigation. Anyway, folks, we're going to take a break here, and in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about California's elder abuse statutes and how it applies to you and affects your life. Once again, this is the Stark Legal Hour.
AM 760 KFMB.
Hi, I'm attorney Anna Romanskaya. If you're involved in a family law matter and need an experienced attorney, give our team at Stark and D'Ambrosio a call. From a divorce to child custody, child support, spousal support, property division, marital settlement agreement, prenuptial agreements, or post-judgment issues, we are here to help you get through the tough times. Our attorneys are compassionate yet aggressive in our representation. We're sensitive to the costs associated with these types of matters, and we will do our best to work with you. That can include taking payment plans or credit card payments to make sure you don't lose your rights due to financial constraints. Many people rush to enter into an agreement, and then they realize they made a bad deal. Entering into the right agreement can save you tens of thousands of dollars. It's important to hire the right attorney. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. Call us today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275.
Have you been injured in a car accident because some other driver wasn't paying attention? Have you suffered serious injuries as a result of someone else's carelessness? Let the lawyers at Stark and D'Ambrosio help. Our team of attorneys are well versed at helping persons injured by the carelessness of others. Here's what one of our clients had to say.
I was hurt in a car accident. I called Patrick Stark, and he did a great job for me. He explained the process to me and made it simple. He handled all the communication with the insurance carriers and was able to negotiate a great settlement. I never had to go to court, and his help didn't stop there. He also negotiated with the healthcare providers and got them to lower their bills, so I received more of a settlement to cover what I went through. I completely recommend the lawyers at Stark and D'Ambrosio.
It is important that you talk to an attorney so that you can protect yourself. Take photographs of the damages to your car, of any injuries, or any bruises you suffer. People often neglect to do that, and then they have no proof of what they went through. Stark and D'Ambrosio attorneys are experienced, aggressive, and know how to handle your matter. Call us today at 619-28-STARK. That's 619-287-8275. Or visit us online at starklegalhour.com.
AM 760 KFMB. This is the Stark Legal Hour, where your legal questions are answered live. Call now.
And we're back, everybody. This is Patrick Stark again. This is the Stark Legal Hour. Your opportunity to call in and ask any questions that you might have regarding any legal issues that you've been wanting to talk to somebody about. Our call-in number, of course, is 1-800-760-KFMB. That's 1-800-760-5362. You can also find us online at starklegalhour.com. You can also give us a call. I'm sure you heard on the other advertisements, but at 28 Stark, that's our number at the office. You need to give us a call during the week. We do provide free consultations over the phone, which is very nice. Saves you some money before you have to go talk to a lawyer. Anyway, so we were going to talk about elder abuse. Jay, what is elder abuse?
Well,
we've heard that term. What is it?
Well, there's some interesting laws on the books, and I think a lot of attorneys overlook them when they're prosecuting a case. For example, if you have a case where you have fraud, and if you have a victim who is older than 65 years old, there's a statute on the books that allows you to prosecute them for something called elder abuse, which is actually a lot easier to prove than common law fraud or civil fraud. And it has remedies that far exceed what you can get on fraud. You can get your punitive damages. You can get something called treble damages, which is a multiplier of your amount of damages. You can get attorney's fees, too, that you wouldn't otherwise have available at fraud. I'm simply amazed sometimes at the cases I see where this could have been available, that attorneys will overlook the elder abuse statutes.
And we hear the term fraud, and, a lot of times that's sort of a generic term, but examples. Give me examples.
Well, like, for example, if you take money from someone under some type of pretense, you make a representation that's either untrue or it's a concealment of a material fact, and that person then relies on that. Maybe it's an investment or something like that. I've seen it in the investment world quite often.
So what if you have a caretaker that's taking care of you?
You'll see that a lot.
And
that's
is taking your money, you're paying them maybe to manage your accounts or to buy their groceries. Yeah, or your children are doing that, and they're using it for some other purpose.
Yeah, and that would fall under common law fraud, and it would also fall under elder abuse as well. So
yeah, because there's multiple categories of elder abuse. It's not simply just the word abuse, like you think you're being physically hurt. Physical abuse, of course, is one of the types of elder abuse that's out there that would be inflicting or threatening to inflict any sort of physical pain on you. If anyone's actually out there doing that to you now, that's not good, and it's not something that should be allowed, and you should definitely report it because it is elder abuse. And if it is from a caretaker, or if you're aware of a caretaker doing that and they're working for some sort of an agency, clearly you should go talk to a lawyer about that. Another category of elder abuse is actually emotional abuse. People don't realize that.
You don't have to physically touch someone to abuse them.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's inflicting some sort of mental pain or anguish or distress on an elderly person. Of course, there's sexual abuse. That's part of elder abuse. God forbid, if there's something untoward happening.
Neglect as well. Yeah. Just neglect.
Neglect is in here as well. I'm actually going through a list for everyone, so it makes it nice and easy. And then we've got exploitation, and that's
a financial aspect.
Illegally taking or misusing funds. And one of those things, like you actually brought up in that, what was the movie we were talking about at the break?
The Wolf of Wall Street.
The Wolf of Wall Street, yeah. Those guys in that boiler room.
Yeah, explain for our listeners, what do you mean by that?
Well, the Wolf of Wall Street, and that movie is very, very, it's a very blue movie, and, hey, they're funny characters, yeah, great, but what they're doing is very, very serious. What they were doing is selling penny stocks to people without giving them proper information from a situation, it's called the boiler room, where lots of guys are doing cold calls to people, and I think if you were to look back and read that book, what they were doing is they were taking advantage of a lot of older people who didn't maybe have the means to understand what they were purchasing, and that would be a clear instance of elder abuse. And financial elder abuse under California law.
Right, and California's Elder Abuse Act, so in other words, you would sue the person who did that for the money that they took from you, and there's various causes of action, but the Elder Abuse Act actually gives you additional remedies if you're over 65 and if you qualify under the Elder Abuse Act.
And you don't even, it isn't even just based on your age. If you're a dependent adult, for example, if you have a disability or something, you would qualify regardless of your age.
Right. Well, Jay, I hate to do this to you. It always drives you nuts when I interrupt you while we're talking about something. But we have a caller on the line. We have a family law child support question. It looks like his name is Bill. Anna, do you want to take this? Hi, Billy. Hi, Bill. You out there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
We sure can. Well, how can we help you, Bill?
Yeah, I got a question. So what are the laws regarding child support? I have a young lady who had a baby, and the father is not paying for any of the child's support or livelihood. And I wonder what the laws were, or if this is something we have to go to court in order for getting the father to at least pay half of the cost of raising this child.
So thank you so much for the call. What I can tell you generally is child support in California is based on a formula. and it's called a guideline formula, and there are certain factors that are taken into account when computing the amount of child support that is to be paid, and some of those factors include the respective incomes of the parents, and another factor is the amount of time that each parent spends with the child. So when you're talking about establishing child support, a couple ways of doing that. One way is to go through the family court and file a motion with the court to initiate a case where the court can compute child support for you. If the parents are not married, they would file something called a parentage action, where parentage would first have to be established.
That's paternity, right?
Yep,
paternity.
Establish paternity, and that can be done through the Department of Child Support Services.
But essentially, in a nutshell, Bill, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find that guy who has not paying for the child, right? We got to figure out the timeshare, figure out what he makes, but you have to get something filed in court to force him to family court services, right?
Well, if you want it to be enforceable, you have to go ahead and file a motion with the court. And if the parents are not married, really the easiest way to do that is through the Department of Child Support Services. And mom can go in and she can open up a case through the Department of Child Support Services, and then they can help her locate him if she doesn't know where he is, and also help her compute the child support.
Does the Department of Child Support Services still have walk-in?
Yes.
Bill, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Are we helping you at all? Is that answering your question, or did you need more?
No, I think that answers my question. I need to go down to the child support services there and start there.
You should have the mom do that, because you're not going to be able to do it for her. You need to have the mom. She can go down there, or she can do it online. If you literally just Google the Department of Child Support Services, it'll give you the steps that she would need to take in order to open up a case, and then assign her to a case social worker who can then work with her in getting the child support established.
So who's Bill going to Google again?
Department of Child Support Services.
Department of Child Support Services.
Yep.
You probably tried and didn't get to write that down.
Best of luck to you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Bill, if you have any more questions, feel free to give us a call during the week, and we can try to help you out. But thanks for that call, Bill. Again, if any other callers out there have any other questions, feel free to give us a call at 1-800-760-KFMB. Now, back on elder abuse, we were talking about physical, emotional, sexual, and then we talked about exploitation. Another example of it, and you hear it on the news all the time, is these people calling up nowadays, and this happened actually to a neighbor of mine, where they said they were with the IRS, and they threatened them that if they didn't immediately transfer money from one account to the other, that they were going to go to jail because they were behind in taxes.
And that was a national scam, too.
Yeah,
they were doing that.
Well, that hit home here in San Diego. I know that affected a lot of people, and actually my neighbors initially transferred $500 to them, and then they were threatening that they wanted another $2,000. And thank God they finally went and talked to another friend of mine who said, "Hey, whoa, slow down. What are you doing?" But that's a perfect example of elder abuse.
Yeah, and I saw that the IRS does not actually go in person or call you in order to get fines. They're going to send you a notice first. So if someone calls you on the telephone and says, "Hey, you need to pay a fine, or we're going to put a lien on your house immediately," you need to be a little wary of that.
And the same thing with emails, because I know there's emails and there's all sorts of fraud going on there. I know I get emails from my bank, or at least, it purports to be my bank, and my name is all misspelled, and all sorts of weird symbols are in there.
And then they want you to click on the email, and then they ask you for your personal information. And that's really, you have to be careful. I've learned that whenever you get an email like that, and let's say even if it is from your bank, let's say it's Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whatever, you should never click the email. You should go to the website of the bank and then log in that way and see if there's actually a message for you. That's really an important key. There's also another form of elder abuse that people don't always talk about, and that is essentially abandonment. And that's really where, let's say they don't have the children don't have a caretaker, and they're just not coming around. And that's unfortunate. To me, that's one of the saddest parts of elder abuse.
Well, before you get into the lawsuit, though, if something is happening like that to an elder, they need to call Adult Protective Services. That would be the first line of defense for that. So
you're right.
Yeah, and then they do an investigation.
Right, because abandonment is essentially where you're just deserting the elder and not providing food or providing care or whatever it is that might be needed. But that also is an example of elder abuse. And elder abuse, normally you're defendants that you'll see in elder abuse, because unfortunately when you get an email scam or a phone call scam, you can't find the defendants. They're gone. They don't have any assets. There's really no ability to recover there. But a lot of times you'll see the care provider services are usually defendants.
Like nursing homes?
Yeah. There's a lot of attorneys out there who specialize in elder abuse, and they do their best to try to represent individuals who've gone through that. So you have to watch out there, folks. If people are calling you up and trying to get money from you and trying to get a scam from you and you feel like you were taking advantage, you should give us a call. We'll be glad to talk to you about that and try to investigate if this is in fact elder abuse, because it's covered under the Elder Abuse, the Elder Adult and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act, and it's a pretty strong law out there that's on the books, and you should think about it. Make sure that your lawyer, if you have a lawyer and you're involved in some sort of a case and you're over 65, you should at least consider or discuss with your lawyer if he's even considered that type of a lawsuit. Anyway, I noticed that our time is almost up. Jay, did you want to say anything to our fans?
Well, I just think that the elder abuse statute is a great companion to any fraud claim if you're over the age of 65 or a dependent adult.
Right.
Or disabled.
Once again, everyone, thanks for listening in. Patrick Stark. Jay, you want to say goodbye?
Have a nice afternoon.